What's up, everyone? This is Vaughn Bethell back again for part two in this four-part mini-series on rent-to-own housing. In today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about flipping versus the rent-to-own strategy. And I still think that this exit strategy is something that more people should be talking about. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the return on investment comparison and both the pros and cons in each strategy. Today, like I mentioned, I'm going to do an overview of each investment strategy in more detail, and that's focusing on flipping and rent to own. Now, we're going to talk about the importance of understanding how to maximize the return on investment on each one of them. By the end of this episode, you should be able to make a decision on which is the best strategy for you, or you can decide that you like both of them and can employ both of them as a great exit strategy. So you need to understand flipping. Now, one of the biggest things with flipping houses is it's a short-term real estate investment strategy. So it involves purchasing properties at a low price, renovating them, and selling at a higher price. Now, the biggest emphasis on flipping houses is that it emphasizes quick profit through market timing and value addition. So you have to buy the property right and be able to add significant value, but still have a spread to make money. Now, when you talk about rent to own and understanding the true rent to own strategy, we're combining the benefits of rental properties and then the ownership opportunities for a tenant buyer. So in our case, we're providing a pathway to home ownership. Now, with the rent to own strategy, the tenant has the option to purchase the home at a predetermined price after renting the property for a specific period. Now, some of the benefits include generating steady income and already having a potential buyer lined up as an investor. So we're going to break down the return on investment comparison. Now, we're going to look at how this compares from flipping to rent to own with the initial investment and what the potential returns could be. We're going to look at the time frame because time is money in real estate. So we're going to look at the return on investment in time in flipping versus rent to own. Now, we know in flipping is shorter, but it can be riskier. And then on the rent to own strategy, it offers long-term gains and stable cash flow. So let's break down the initial investment a little bit more. So when you're flipping, it requires a significant initial investment. Now, most of this investment goes to purchasing the property. So you got the purchase price and then the renovating the property or the repair estimate or repair price. So when you take those two together, that's a significant initial investment. In the rent-to-own strategy, there's less initial renovation costs, so we don't do your HDTV type of flips. It's more so making sure all the major systems are good. So what we want to do is make sure that our buyers have a nice house that they can go then take and make a home. So we're not doing high-end fixtures and we're not doing, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 renovations. So there's less initial renovation costs, and it focuses more on the long-term investment through rental income. So initial costs are going to include minor renovations and legal costs for setting up rent-to-own agreements, right? And if you're doing this as a consistent exit strategy multiple times a month, multiple times a year, you'll have these agreements already set up. So that legal cost for setting up your agreement is a one-time cost. Now, let's break this down into timing. So if you're looking at flipping, the returns are generally quicker, but it depends heavily on the market's volatility, right? So over the last couple of years, we've seen a significant change in the market. And then specifically in 2022 and 2023, we saw the days on market increase significantly for properties that were on the MLS. So you can highlight a typical timeline from purchase to sale. That could be a few months to a year. But every time that you go another day, another week, another month, carrying that property is eating into your profit. So depending on the project and market conditions, flipping could be a great exit strategy. Now with the rent to own strategy, it offers a slower but steadier return on investment. So we get monthly rental income or cash flow followed by the eventual sale. We're also getting a significant down payment, so the full return is realized only when the tenant decides to buy the property, which could take several years. However, we're getting a cash infusion up front, we're getting monthly cash flow, and then we're getting potentially, should they exercise the option, we get another cash infusion at the sale of the property. Now let's look at market risk and potential gains. So with flipping, there's a high market risk as profit depends on the housing market, the conditions, and the ability to sell quickly after renovation. The potential gain can be substantial in a short period if the market conditions are favorable. So if you buy right and the property moves fast, or we're in a hot market, you can make a significant amount of income in a short period of time. Now, let's go to the rent-to-own strategy. It's a lower risk, and it's due to the ongoing rental income, which can buffer against market fluctuations. So in the last year to year and a half, switching to a rent-to-own strategy or lease option strategy has been the go-to for a lot of investors because their properties have been sitting on the market for quite some time. Now, the final sale price in a rent-to-own property can also be locked in ahead of time, and we want to make sure that we incorporate for the next 1, 2, 3, maybe even 5 years of appreciation. So by locking in that price ahead of time, we can protect against market downturns, but we might limit the gains if the market appreciates significantly. So if the market just goes crazy over the next couple of years, we might miss out a little bit on the gains, but we're getting that security of the rental income. Now let's look at cash flow considerations. There's no cash flow when you're flipping properties, right? Because the property is vacant during renovation, you're not getting any type of payments, and it's vacant until it sells. But you still have expenses like mortgage payments, taxes, and utilities during the holding period, and these can significantly impact profitability if you have to hold that property for a long period of time. Now with rent to own, I'm getting continuous cash flow through rental payments, and they can help cover my mortgage payments and any other type of property related costs, expenses, maintenance, or repairs. If you do this properly, you can carry over those costs to the tenant buyer. And this can be particularly advantageous in providing income stability during, so when we're having to cover ongoing expenses. And then we have the long-term financial impact of flipping versus rent to own. Now, flipping can yield high returns that can be reinvested quickly. And if we do this right, we can potentially multiply wealth in a short period of time. With rent to own, we're going to get steadier accumulation of wealth, which might be more suitable for your more risk-averse investors. And if you're looking for less hands-on management and more predictable returns. So let's look at choosing the right strategy. The first thing I would recommend is that you assess for you personally what your financial goals are and what your investment goals are when it comes to real estate. The second thing I want you to look at is the market conditions as they are today and kind of have an idea of where the market's going over the next couple of years. So what does the market conditions look like? And are they going to favor flipping, or are they going to favor more of the rent to own over the next 12, 18 to 24 months? And then what's your risk tolerance and investment timeline considerations, right? Are you risk tolerant? Are you risk averse? Or are you a very risky person? Typically as investors, we like to take on more risk than the average person, right? But we do have a lot of risk averse investors out there that just like the monthly cash flow. Now, in conclusion, it's important to understand the return on investment comparison and weigh the pros and cons of flipping versus rent to own housing. Now, I highly encourage you to explore both strategies and consider incorporating rent to own as a valuable addition to your real estate investment portfolio, especially now when properties may be sitting on the market a little longer than we would like.